The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hi Orangeville, welcome to the post office. I am your host, Mayor Lisa Post. Today I'm excited to be joined by one of my fellow councillors, Councillor Andy MacIntosh. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
No problem.
So the point of this show right now is I'm doing a bit of an introduction to every member of council. So we're going to talk casually just about kind of your background, when you moved to Orangeville, what led you to run for council, and then eventually we'll get into the council and political stuff. So let's start with some of your history in Orangeville.
Okay. I've lived here a long time. We moved here in 1966.
Oh, wow.
So if I
a few years ago.
It's a few years ago, so it'll give my age away if I tell you. But yeah, we moved here. Orangeville is quite a small little town. So I've lived here that long. Went to school here, got my education here. So I know the town, you know, from the very beginning.
So you went to ODSS?
I went to ODSS.
Me too.
Yes.
Me too.
Yes.
All
ODSS
right.
was almost a new school when I went. But yes, been here a long time. Yeah.
Excellent.
And I got my education here, like I say, and then I got a job in Toronto and commuted like everybody else, and eventually I got involved in the fire department in emergency services as a volunteer firefighter.
Were you doing emergency services when you were working in Toronto as well, or
no,
totally different sector?
Totally different sector.
Okay, so what led you into emergency services and fire?
Friends of mine, my neighbor was a volunteer firefighter, and I thought, you know, geez, that sounds like a good thing to be in, you know, helping out the community and having fun at the same time. It was something I thought I'd be interested in, so I applied and I got the position. So fortunately for me, in 5 years of being a volunteer, it turned into a full-time position as a fire inspector.
Okay.
And then 5 years after that, it turned into a deputy fire chief. And
so when you started with the fire department in Orangeville, was it primarily a volunteer department, or did it have a full-time complement at that time?
It was all volunteer. The only
volunteer.
full-time person was the chief. So it was like a one-person show.
Okay.
Yeah, it was quite different.
So as a fire inspector then, how many residents would have been in Orangeville when you started as a fire inspector, and what did your role as fire inspector look like?
Well, it was to inspect buildings for compliance with fire safety codes and stuff like that. So there was enough to keep you busy. We really could have used 3 or 4 people.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, Orangeville was very slow off the mark getting going on these things. They relied on the fire chief at the time to do inspections, and you know, he just couldn't keep up, didn't have the experience. And
so was it only new builds you were looking at, or was it all businesses just to make sure that they were keeping up with compliances?
Everything. We ended up just being on a complaint basis. You could keep busy just on complaints.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So talk about your time as a volunteer firefighter. What was that experience like?
It was interesting. It was a lot of training, a lot of hours. It was a lot different than it is today in some respects, but in other respects the same with the training and stuff. Like every weekend pretty well, Saturday you were tied up doing training. There was nowhere near the calls they get now. I think we were running about 130 calls a year, which, you know, isn't that much, but it's, you know, just every 2 days, 2.5 days you'd have a call. And it was a lot different. It was, you know, same area, same calls, same type of calls, everything, but just not as many as they get nowadays.
And then you were an inspector for 5 years and then into the deputy chief role. So what changes between being a firefighter or an inspector into a deputy chief and then chief's role?
The inspector to deputy chief wasn't a huge change because I still did inspections, but you were put more in a management position at the time. So that kind of led you up to being a fire chief, which is full management and scene management sort of thing.
So you saw our fire department change a lot over the years then. You've seen growth and change. So what did the fire team look like when you started in comparison to what it is today?
Well, now they have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week full-time shift. Back then, like I say, there was nothing. It was strictly all volunteers. The way it works now is the full-time handles smaller calls, and when I say smaller calls, like I mean medicals, in-town car accidents, things like that. They just send the one truck, which is really all you need for those type of calls. If it's something more serious, then they page out the volunteers. So we rely very heavily still to this day with the volunteers.
Even with a 24-hour force, there's still that reliance. And
Absolutely.
I know we still have a lot of really great dedicated volunteers. And what's the, why, I know a lot of people have asked, why is there still a volunteer fire team when you've got a 24-hour force? So you'd be the best one to explain that. So
it's just staffing. The full-time, you've only got 4 or 5 staff on any one time.
So for any calls, then you can just call in volunteers to fill in for a second truck or to...
Usually you can get 1 truck out the door, which helps with our response times, but if you need any more than that, you need to call the volunteers in. So things like fire alarms that go off, you need the volunteers to come out because you don't know what you're going to see when you get there. If you show up with 1 truck and it's actually a fire, look out.
Yeah. So, no, that makes a lot of sense. So you said the community's changed a lot. Now our fire department responds to calls not just within Orangeville but in the surrounding area. Has it always been that way? How's that relationship always been?
The area's gotten a bit smaller. We now cover about 100 square miles of Dufferin County.
Okay.
It used to be more, believe it or not. We used to go all the way to Airport Road.
Oh, wow.
To the east.
Okay.
So that was a long haul. And funny story is the Mono Mills Fire Department, everyone's familiar with, at the corner of Airport and Highway 9, was actually in Orangeville's area.
Oh.
So
that's interesting.
They actually had a fire alarm a couple of times go off there, and we would show up.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, they built it in our area. I don't know, I guess they figured, you know, the day was going to come. Like, it was ridiculous for us to go out there. But we covered all of Mono to the east, which was a long, long way out there.
Yeah, that's changed a lot then.
Yes. Yes.
So you retired as a fire chief when?
Yes. About 5 years ago.
And then you decided you were going to run for council.
Yes.
So before you made that decision, I know throughout, you know, you've raised your family here, you and your wife were here, your kids were raised here, you were always involved in a lot of different things. So talk about a bit of the volunteer work that you've done over the years and different organizations that you've worked with.
Well, my volunteer work, I was on the board of directors for the food bank for a while.
Yeah.
Community Live in Dufferin, I'm still on the board of directors for that with yourself.
With me, yeah.
Yeah. I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
I've always tried to help out when I can. It's just in my nature. And again, the volunteer, once you become a volunteer firefighter, there's not a lot of opportunity to do anything else.
That's right.
You can't really join a kinsman club, things like this. You just can't do it. You could in the old days. And I remember when I first joined, all the older firefighters were all in the Kinsman Club. It was just almost a natural thing. But over the time, we get so busy with training and actual calls that you just don't have time to do anything else. So once I retired, I was able to do a bit more, like on the food bank, Community Live in Dufferin, and things like that.
Awesome. Now, working for the fire department, you were a town employee. So like Councillor Sherwood, you had your kind of hands into the municipal pot for a long time, just as a staff. So once you retired, what made you make the decision that you wanted to head into the political policy making side? Well,
I'll be honest with you. When I worked for the town, I thought the politicians were the dumbest people in the world. I really did. I thought.
I love your honesty.
There's hardly any pay. Everybody hates you. You know, anything goes wrong, you get blamed for it, whether you can help it or not. And I thought, why would anyone want to do it for that kind of money? But then I equated it to being a volunteer firefighter. They got paid very little, and here they are risking their lives. So that wasn't what changed my mind for politics. But
it's a commitment to community.
It is. Yeah. It is. And a couple of weeks after I retired, a former politician said to me, you know, you'd be a good politician. Because you like to talk, and you know, as fire chief, it's a very political position anyway. So I suddenly, it was like a light went off. I thought, you know what, they're right. That's what I want to do. So that's when I decided at the time I want to run for deputy mayor. I saw a need for it in both the county and the town to be a deputy mayor, and chose to run for it and was successful.
I'm so glad you did. I know the first time that we really got to know each other was back when I used to sit at all the council meetings after the 2014 election, when I was committed to writing my blog. And at that time, the fire chief attended every council meeting, and some of them were pretty contentious. So I wondered if that led into your decision at all as well, just having sat in so many different councils with so many different councils.
I would say it helped. It wasn't my determining factor to do it, but I forget, I did tell somebody how many councils I've actually worked for, how many mayors, and everyone's different. And you just, like I say, the fire chief's position is a very political position. You've really got to have a good filter and know how to talk to people, know how to get your point across without wasting their time. And it's almost the same as a council position, in my opinion.
Right. Now the stuff, well, I know, and as a fire chief too, the stuff that you're advocating for as a fire chief to improve the fire department is huge financial asks.
Yes.
Were you, through your years as fire chief, did you struggle with councils to get, to have the understanding and education for council to understand the needs?
Some councils, yes. Some councils were harder than others. We had a great councillor in Councillor Campbell. She was very pro-safety and pro-fire, so she was very helpful to me. There were some councils, they just didn't want to spend the money, they didn't see it. But I felt that was my job to convince them as to why we need this. If in the end they chose not to honor my wishes with a new truck, I didn't get upset. That's the way things are. And I tried, and I did the best I could.
Well, when you decided to run for deputy mayor, where most people start at councillor and kind of work their way through the chain. So what led to your decision to run for deputy mayor and not councillor?
That's the position I wanted to be in. I wanted to be in the county. Okay. I always felt the town was misrepresented in the county. Quite frankly, we were hated. For better or worse, truth or not truth, we were disliked in the county. It was Orangeville against Dufferin. Right. So I really felt a need, I wanted to change that.
And start bridging some gaps.
Bridging some gaps.
Yeah.
And mending some fences.
Absolutely.
And there was a lot. Like, you know, you still see it today, even when Orangeville comes in the room, everyone kind of, oh, here they come. But I think the last council, I think we did a good job of, you know, we're working for the county as well as Orangeville. When you're sitting on county council, you are working for the county, so you do what's best. And we voted for some things that maybe didn't impact Orangeville, but they helped, say, Grand Valley, for example. So I was glad with the way it went, and that's why I wanted to be deputy. And
that can be a tough piece, you know, having just earned my first role sitting at county council. There are some things that maybe are the right things for the county, but not necessarily the way that Orangeville would maybe vote. So it's difficult sometimes to take off that hat. So did you ever run into other challenges with that along the way?
There was a few times. There was a few times that we voted maybe not in the best interest in the town. It didn't affect the town a whole lot, but if somebody sat back and said, well, that's kind of an unusual way to vote. And it was funny, after the votes, they kind of looked at us and thought, well, this is different. This is not the Orangeville we know, because the previous Orangeville would absolutely not vote that way. They wouldn't try to get along, they wouldn't cooperate, and do what's best. Because let's face it, we live in Dufferin County. As Orangeville goes, as the county goes, it all affects each other.
It absolutely does. We're a community, and our residents don't know the boundary lines. No. And those who live in Amaranth will say they live in Orangeville, and in Mono, same thing, because a lot of them are literally, you could jump across the road and be in Mono, right?
Absolutely.
So no, that's great, and I can feel that already. Sitting at the county, I know that some of that work's already been done, and I'm grateful for the work that you and Sandy did to start building some of those relationships.
Yeah, I know previous to us, the mayor and deputy mayor were always voting opposite, and it just wasn't working. So I made a commitment that I'm going to work with the mayor. We're going to get things pushed through, and
that's good,
and do what we can.
So, in your time at county council as deputy mayor, you sat on a couple of committees. I think you sat on Health and Human Services and the General Governance Committee.
Yes.
So, can you talk a little bit to the people watching today about the governance structure of the county and how that all works and what you do with those committees?
Yeah, it's a little different than, say, Orangeville Council. We debate a lot of things before it ever gets to county council. A lot of people tune into county council and they say, well, it's almost predetermined. Well, it does look that way because it almost is. We vote at the committee level on some of these items, and we debate them at the committee level. So I won't say it's a a slam dunk by the time it gets to council, but there's very few times it gets overturned. When it comes to council, as you'll find out more and more, it really doesn't get overturned that often, unless it's a really contentious issue.
Right.
I can think of the COVID vaccinations. That was a contentious issue as it was in Orangeville.
Right. So Health and Human Services was one of the ones that you sat on, and what did they deal with as a committee?
Many different things. The officer of health, stuff like this, the COVID vaccinations, things like that were dealt with there.
Yeah, I'm on that committee now too, and I'm really starting to kind of get into it. There's lots of really neat stuff that happens there, and they really deal with a lot of the stuff that's social policy. They deal with social housing, and Dufferin Oaks is under there, so there's really a lot to learn along the way.
And that was kind of a new committee. That come along about halfway through last term.
Okay, I didn't realize that. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And then the general governance was the other one, and I understand that one has a lot to do with money and policy. Is that right? I don't sit on that one. Deputy Mayor does.
Yeah, it's excuse me. It's very financially focused, budgets and things like that, and yeah.
Interesting. So you served 4 years as Deputy Mayor. It was an interesting 4 years because we dealt with some really big topics during that last term of council, with the policing change and the railway, and of course we got kind of steamrolled by the COVID-19 pandemic. So talk about your time on council, those last 4 years as Deputy Mayor, and just tell me a bit about your experience. I
enjoyed it. I enjoyed being Deputy Mayor. I enjoyed the work that was involved. And I'll get into this, why I chose to step back as a councillor, to go to council. I felt I did what I wanted to do. I didn't know if there was any more as far as county that we could do. We've showed the cooperation, the spirit of cooperation with them. And I thought, we've done what we intended to do. The mayor and deputy mayor got along great. We voted together. There was very few times we voted against each other. We did, but there was very few times, maybe twice. But other than that, it worked. So I was happy with the way it went.
Yeah.
So now, time for 2 more people to step up, which you did, along with the deputy mayor.
Excellent.
And that was really why I did that.
So what do you think some of the biggest decisions that we had to make during our last term were? What was the hardest decision you had to make?
The police.
The police, yeah.
That was absolutely the hardest. They were my friends.
Yeah.
I worked with them. I worked side by side with them. I couldn't do what was best for them. I had to do what was best for the taxpayers.
Absolutely.
And that's why I made the decision I did. I stand by it. I told people if it didn't work, I would not run again.
Yep.
It worked.
Yep.
I run again.
Yep.
And I stood by my decision. I still do. I think it's a better deal for Orangeville. And I'm hearing from people on the street more and more that it's good.
Well, and I think the other thing that's really cool that maybe some residents don't know is that in speaking with a lot of the officers that did the transition from Orangeville Police over to OPP, they're really, really happy because now they have different opportunities. They've got new opportunities. I know we've lost a lot of our officers that we had in Orangeville, but we've lost them for exactly the right reason. It's because they've been promoted. It's because they're working for a specialty group. It's because they are exceptional officers who have now been given some really great opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I knew police officers in town that moved to OPP, and they loved it. Yeah. Like before this happened.
Before our transition.
They were losing police to OPP anyway.
Right.
So it was coming.
Yeah. Now, so we dealt with the OPP transition, we dealt with the sale of the railway, COVID-19 pandemic. What do you think was the biggest accomplishment that you had through your term? And it could be at the Orangeville level or at the county level.
I think keeping the budget as low as we did. The last 2 years, it was under 1%.
Yeah.
And I know the last budget with the previous council, I think it was close to 5, if not over 5%. And we could get it under 1%.
Yeah.
And I think that was the accomplishment that I wanted to do going in, and we did. As a council, we did it.
So tell me about your family's thoughts when you announced to them shortly after your retirement as fire chief that you wanted to run for council or for deputy mayor even.
The deputy mayor,
was your family excited? Were they a little nervous?
No, they're just used to me doing whatever I want to do.
Fair enough.
My wife kind of, is that really what you want to do? And I think she was more shocked when I ran for council, and she thought I'd do 1 term and then get out, sort of thing. Right. But I stayed in for another term of council, and yeah, I don't think they mind.
No.
They don't mind at all. I know my daughter used to get mad on Facebook.
I was going to say that. That's a tough thing for our kids, especially to see, as you know, as through the pandemic and through the OPP transition.
Yes.
There was some contentious, nasty Facebook stuff that was happening, and I know it was hard for my kids and my husband to see that, and I know it was really bothering Brittany as well. So that was kind of going to be my question: is how has she adapted to that? How has Kathy adapted to that?
Yeah, my wife just brushes it off. She just ignores it. My daughter, I had to sit her down and say, you know, these people, just don't answer them. That's what they want you to engage with them. Don't do it. And she hasn't.
And it's not personal. It's about policy.
Absolutely.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Some can be pretty personal and, you know, mean-spirited, but you got to have thick skin to be in politics.
You do. Yeah. You definitely do.
Yeah.
So we're in this term now. We've just started. We're a few months in. We've had some interesting times along the way already. So within the next 3.5 years or so of this term, what are some of the things that you want to accomplish?
I want to keep taxes down.
Yeah.
We did I think it was 2.3.
2.3, yeah.
2.3, which, you know, isn't great. But if you look at other places, they're around 5%. 5.5%. I look at Kitchener-Waterloo at 5%. With the pandemic, people are struggling, and we've still been able to keep our taxes at a reasonable level, and I want to see that continue.
Yeah.
I think that was the #1 issue in town. I still think it's the #1 issue.
I do too.
And we still need to keep
And as affordability continues to be a struggle, and as inflation still affects us all, affordability is tough, and we have to do what we can. And as a council, I think we're going to have a tough time moving forward, because we've got some big infrastructure projects to get done, and everything costs way more than it did. So how do you think we're going to handle some of those things? What are your ideas?
It's going to be tough.
It will be.
It's going to be tough. Obviously, taxes are going to increase. Taxes do not go down.
Yeah.
We've made great strides with the police as far as tax not raising the way they were before, because that was an awful burden on the taxpayers, was the increase in policing. So with the OPP, that's going to give us a bit of a break. That's why we've been able to keep a 2%, 2.3%, because of things like that. So we just have to keep that going. Obviously, the things we need to do, you know, you mentioned some of them. We just have to keep our eye on the taxes.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we still have to maintain a level of service, but we have to keep the taxpayer in mind. But it's a juggling act, and that's what this job is.
Yeah, it definitely is. Now you're taking on a new role this term as well, as the councillor who's going to be in charge of one of our brand new committees, which is the Seniors Advisory Committee. Yes. It sounds like we've got some really great people that are eager to get going on there, and you've joined me at a couple of events at the Seniors Club and around town. So tell me about what you're hoping to get done on that committee.
I hope to be a liaison, this committee, between the committee and council. A lot of people, they don't understand why something is done. They don't understand why we can't do something. Things like that. I hope to be able to explain that, and if they have concerns, bring those concerns to council, because their voices aren't always heard. Yeah. People don't know how to go about it. They don't do internet, they don't do emails and things like that. So I'm hoping to bridge that gap between council and the seniors. And you know, seniors, they're the biggest voters in town. Yep. As we've seen over the years. So I really hope to engage with those seniors.
I think that's going to be really great, because I know that was one of the things, and you probably heard it when you were knocking on doors too. There was a lot of seniors who, especially since the pandemic, really didn't know how to best engage council anymore, because some of them don't have access to technology or they're not comfortable with technology, and anybody who's immune compromised was still feeling leery about coming to council in person. Absolutely. So it was being a little difficult to participate. So I think it'll be really great to get this committee going, and I'm excited to see what you guys can come up with.
Yeah, I am too. I'm really looking forward to some of their ideas.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really great. Now, the one other thing that I don't even know if I've told you this yet, but one of the upcoming town halls through the election, I promised that I was going to do some town hall forums that were going to be a little less formal than a council meeting, but would give everybody the opportunity to come and ask questions and have it really, really informal. So we're going to do one coming up in September, and this is going to be your official invite to join me, because I'd really like to do it focused on seniors in September, and bring yourself and Councillor Stevens as the council liaison for the Accessibility Committee, and really have both of you there to help navigate some of those questions and bring some great ideas forward.
Yeah, and the seniors are the fastest growing age demographics in town, so it's certainly something we need to look out for and look after.
Absolutely. As we move into the last couple of minutes that we've got left here on the show, is there anything else that you want to talk about that are some top priorities coming forward this term?
Well, we've got the railway money.
Yeah.
I want to see that spent wisely.
Me too.
I don't want to do it frivolously and, get people's ideas. I know we said we'll listen to people, but we ultimately make the decision where that money's going to go, and we've got to do what's best for all the taxpayers, not a few that want something. So we have to keep that in mind. Again, this whole council thing is a juggling act between taxes and needs. So we've got to find out what our needs are, not what our wants are, but what our needs are. So this is something we have to keep in mind at all time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the public consultation that we're going to do about the rail money. I think it's going to be really interesting to hear what our community thinks is going to be some of the key pieces. I think we're going to hear, just based on knocking on doors this election, I think we're going to hear a lot about recreation and parks things like Tony Rose, and indoor turf I know has been a big one, and you may have heard that along the way too.
Yeah, there's a lot of ideas out there.
There definitely is, and I know that over our term too, we're going to have to address Tony Rose and make some decisions about that. So we've got some big projects coming up, definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
But I'm excited that we've got a really strong team, and I'm really glad that you're a part of it. And
no, I think this council is just as strong as the last one, and when you have a strong council, you get things done.
Absolutely.
When you spend the whole night fighting with each other, you get nothing done.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
So I'm very glad that this council is in place, and I know we can do great things.
I think so too. So we're down to kind of the last minute, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to give any final words to the viewers that you want to say. And
I just want to thank the viewers again who voted for me. It was a good 4 years before, and let's have another good 4 years and see what happens after that. But I'm really pleased to be here and helping each other and the committees and things like that, and doing what's best for the taxpayers. That's been my motto all the time, and that's what I live by.
Well, I'm really grateful that you came and had this chat. I think it's really great for the viewers to get to know a little bit more about Andy MacIntosh, especially your time in fire. I think there's some really cool stuff there.
You've seen our community. Stories.
I'm sure you could. We've seen our community change a lot. So thank you for being here tonight, and look forward to seeing you at council in a couple of weeks. But to our viewers, thank you for being here tonight, and we will see you on the next episode of The Post Office.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Hi, I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Allison.
Coming up on the next parenting show, we're talking about the perils of perfectionism.
And it really is a peril. Some kids really struggle. We're going to help you overcome them.
That's only on Rogers TV.
Now you can enjoy Disney Plus on Ignite TV. Just say Disney Plus into your Ignite TV voice remote and stream Disney Plus movies and series like Marvel Studios' Black Panther,